So, like we've been doing for the last two colors, we're going to be starting off with the top three commons for black. So, first up, we have Torment of Venom. This is two generic black for an instant. Put three -1/-1 counters on target creature. Its controller loses 3 life unless he or she sacrifices another non-land permanent or discards a card. I mean, ignoring the second part of this text, this is a 4 mana, put 3 -1/- counter on target creature. This is alright, right? And then it also has the Rider. I mean, overall, this is an alright card. 4 mana, instant speed to do 3 -1/- counters, fine. There's also synergy with -1/- counters, although that's almost entirely an Amonkhet, which is only going to be one pack. So the synergy is going to be kind of tougher to get to. But, you can't really go too wrong picking this card. Now, it's a Punisher effect. So basically, your opponent gets to choose what the effect is. Oftentimes, they're going to be losing that 3 life because I'm assuming going to be much better than sacrificing a permanent or discarding a card. And in most cases, that's really not going to be that significant. Losing 3 life, ultimately, it's not that bad. And black isn't exactly one of the more aggressive colors in Amonkhet. Black-red can be sort of aggressive, but really it's red-green and red-white that are more aggressive colors. So your opponent losing 3 life isn't really going to impact the game that much.
Well, with black-white zombies, it might be a
black-white
little
zombies,
aggressive with
yes.
that
Black-white
with
zombies
that
is
one card. What was it? Not marching orders. Unusual tactics. I
right.
can't even remember
No,
the name of it.
you're right.
Unconventional tactics. That's what
Black-white
it was.
zombies is an aggressive archetype, but I tend to draft black a lot because I like removal and black has removal, and so sometimes that tends to more.
Black has hella removal
Yeah,
in this set.
black tends to
We'll
lean.
see.
Yeah, black tends to move into more of a grindy. If you're not into black-white zombies, black tends to default into a grindy mid-range or control style of play with good removal to back it up and beefy creatures. But for a common, this is a very fine pick. You wouldn't go too wrong to pick this up. Next, we have Ruin Rat. This is a generic and a black for a 1/1 rat with Death Touch. When it dies, exile target card from an opponent's graveyard. So paying 2 mana for a 1/1 Death Touch, perfectly good rate. I mean,
Good old typhoid rats.
Exactly, good old typhoid rats with a Rider. When it dies, you get to take a card from an opponent, even the card that you traded in combat potentially out of the graveyard. And with a set that has so many graveyard shenanigans with Embalm and Aftermath cards and Eternalized is definitely a very relevant ability. And 2 mana 1 with that touch, you're always gonna pick that. That's a great card. And finally, we have Lethal Sting. This is 2 generic and a black for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast Lethal Sting, put a -1/-1 counter on a creature you control and destroy target creature. A+ premium removal.
Oh, this card is so good at common.
Yeah,
oh my god.
It's basically 3 mana unconditional removal. If you don't have a creature in play, then you can't cast it, but you're going to have a creature in play most games. And as long as your creature in play, that downside is almost negligible because it's, like I said, unconditional removal at 3 mana. That's insanely good for draft.
Common.
It's insanely good for limit. I will pick up every single one of these that comes to me.
It's so good.
Oh, by the way, were you gonna say something about the rats? I think I might have cut you off a little.
The only thing I was going to mention about Ruin Rat is that unlike Rancid Rats, which was from Shadow of Innistrad, which was a 1/1 Death Touch with Skulk, it does not have a zombie tag on it, which is just worthy of noting.
That is relevant, I suppose, but I will never shirk a 2 mana 1 with Death Touch. That's always fine.
Oh yeah, it's amazing.
We had a card in Amonkhet, 3 mana 2/2 Death Touch. It was a Scorpion. It also had cycling for 2, but I never cycled that card, which was good because Death Touch creatures are always good. But paying 3 mana for Death Touch creature compared to 2 mana for Death Touch creature is actually a pretty wide margin. It's much better to be able to just pay 2 for something that's probably going to trade with something. You feel a lot better.
And it has additional utility as well.
Yeah, it's additional utility, true. Oh, Lethal Sting though, I am in love with this card. I love cards like that. This is gonna make draft hecka good. Hecka good. Yeah, sure, we'll go with that. Alright. Next up, we have Accursed Horde. 3 generic and a black for a 3/3 zombie. You can pay 1 generic and a black to give target attacking zombie indestructible until end of turn.
Indestructible.
This is an okay card. 4 mana 3/3 is just bad stats, but being able to give an attacking zombie indestructible is a powerful ability. Oh, it can actually give itself indestructible because it's any attacking zombie. So if you attack with it, you can pay another 2 mana to give it indestructible. Although that is a bit of a sink. For the white black zombies deck, it's fine. I'm talking about draft here. It's good. Giving indestructible is a headache for your opponents because that makes blocking so much worse. But
Yeah.
in constructed, there's just better zombies. And
A 4 mana 3/3 is not where you
yeah,
want to
four
be
mana three is yeah.
with an effect that is a little marginal. If this was just one black target zombie gets indestructible until end of turn, that may be a little bit more powerful in terms of like a sideboard card for like use in against like control matchups. However, you have to be attacking, and that's the weak part of the card.
Well, I don't doubt that you won't be attacking for the most part when you
Well, I
running a
mean, as
zombies
in
list.
like being able to activate it at instant speed to
Very
save your
true.
creature from a removal spell.
Exactly.
Now, one thing I want to point out about this card, I really love the art. So, that kind of like white gooey slash translucent stuff you see on the side, that's like the Heckma being destroyed, and then all these zombies are rushing
Dude, the
in.
Heckma is hecka destroyed.
Yeah, the Heckma is hecka destroyed. And this is from your perspective. Those gold rings that zombie is grabbing onto is your necklace. And this card is so cool.
The artwork is very nice. I
Artwork
do very like the
standpoint.
artwork. The perspective is very cool perspective. The artwork is very sweet.
I just like imagining like that story moment of, there's this world, this plane that's forever lived in this protective bubble, knowing that there's all these zombies on the outside, and now it's gone. It's like if you ever watched Attack on Titan, it's kind of like that wall they all live in, and then one day a giant titan kicks down your wall. Well, and one day your god pharaoh you worshipped all your life turns out to be a total dick.
Dude, Folas is a massive dick. What's wrong with him?
Yeah, stop it.
Stop.
All right, next card is Amit Eternal. It is a 3 CMC creature for 2 and a black, zombie crocodile demon, which is one of the best creature types of the set. It's a 5/5 with afflict 3. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, put a -1/-1 counter on Ahmed Eternal. Whenever Ahmed Eternal deals combat damage to the player, remove all -1/-1 counters from it. I like this card.
No, it's a very good card. 3 mana for 5/5 is way above rate,
Oh
obviously.
yeah, so good.
And most likely the next turn your opponent's gonna cast a spell, brings out to 4/4, still above rate for 3 mana. So if you're paying 3 mana for 4/4, then you swing in, depending on what cards you play. Well, let's say you're on the play, right? You play a 3 mana 5/5, then your opponent follows up with their own 3 mana spell. Your 5/5 becomes a 4/4. Then you swing in with your 4/4, probably better stats than the 3 mana card that your opponent played. So potentially your opponent doesn't block. If your opponent doesn't block, then it becomes a 5/5 again. Then we have to go through the entire thing. If your opponent does block, then most likely it was a chump block, so your opponent is down a creature, and they take 3 damage from the afflict clause. So in most every situation, this card is very powerful card. Rightfully so, as it is rare.
Now, one thing I see happening a lot is you pick your Amit Eternal, you use Lethal Sting to put a -1/-1 counter on it, remove their relevant blocker, go in for an attack, and then all those -1/-1 counters just get removed off of it.
You are filthy. You are filthy.
I love the design of the card. Like, I don't think this card will see standard play. I mean, there's just too many times in standard where your opponent can play multiple spells in one turn.
This also dies immediately to Grasp of Darkness, which is sad.
Yeah.
Also dies immediately to a revolted Fatal Push without.
But what doesn't die to that? Come on.
I mean, okay, fair. I mean, it could have seen play. This card could have seen play, but in the zombie deck potentially. But there's just better 3-drops, I think, especially because like you got the Lord at 3 mana, and I think there's another card at 3 mana that you play a lot in the zombies deck. So there's too much competition.
Yeah, like the general strategy of zombies is to go wide. Like sometimes you'll get zombies that are really big, but the general plan is to go wide, and this guy does not really help your wide strat as much. I don't think he'll be in zombies, but I could easily see that happening.
I mean, because a 3 mana 5/5 is definitely huge.
I could potentially see that happening, is what I should say.
Yeah, 3 mana 5/5 is huge. I mean, I guess one problem is your opponent. Let's say your opponent's on the Temur energy deck, right? So you pay 3 mana for this guy, then your opponent plays 3 mana for. Wait, what's the Hydra, Bristling Hydra? Is that 4 mana for 4/3? It might be 4 mana for 4/3 actually.
Bristle, yeah, the one that gets +1/+1 in hexproof.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a 4 mana 4/3, I
So I guess
believe.
I guess on the draw it's poor because on the draw you're gonna be playing a 5/5 that becomes a 4/4 that. Well, actually, it's not even that poor because then so actually overall it's a good card. What I'm getting is a good card because if you're on the draw and you play this on your turn 2, then your opponent plays a 4-drop and this becomes a 4/4, you can potentially trade up with your opponent's 4-drop, or if you're on the play, your opponent you're on parity mana and then you're coming in with a much higher power creature than the mana cost that you're at. So in most situations, this is a very powerful card. It's just
Yeah,
there's a competition when it comes to what the zombie deck wants to play.
yeah, because you don't want to be playing it over Diregraph Colossus. That card is too much of a bomb.
And the Lord is too
And
good.
Lord of a Curse is way too good. Yeah, there's too much competition at the 3 mana slot. But this I think this card deserves an honorable mention though. Like it's
It's on the edge.
it's neat.
It's
I like
on
it.
the edge, and frankly, we might be under evaluating too. I mean, it's a good. I mean, 3 mana for 5/5. It's just 3 mana for 5/5. Very powerful.
Yeah, and I think the Afflict 3 is not irrelevant. It means your opponent can't chump block all day.
But I mean, if they don't jump out, then they're also taking like 4 or 3 to the face, or maybe
Plus all the
five.
-1, -1 gets reset.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
nasty. Yeah. All right, next card is Apocalypse Demon.
What a name.
4 generic black for a creature demon star. Flying. Its power and toughness is equal to the number of cards in your graveyard. At the beginning of your upkeep, tap Apocalypse Demon unless you sacrifice another creature. This just screams intro pack rare. If we still had intro packs.
Yeah.
I mean, 6 mana for. I mean, honestly, okay. Let's say you have a dedicated. Graveyard deck, Black Green Delirium, for instance. By the time you get the 6 mana, you've dumped. Let me you know what? Let's be generous here. 12 cards in the yard, so you get a 6 mana 12/12 flyer. That's a pretty big guy. Then your opponent kills it, and then you're just like, well, all right, that's it. What do we do now? Playing 6+ mana for cards that don't do something impactful, but when you drop it, besides just being good stats, is definitely mediocre. In constructed, it's absolutely not where you want to be in constructed formats.
And that's really the problem with this, the ceiling of this card is it's just a vanilla flyer that can have, pretty insane stats, but that's it. That's all it does. And something that makes me a little sad is that this card almost harkens back to Desecration Demon, from Return to Ravnica.
Oh, to compare it to Desecration Demon.
No, I mean, I'm obviously not comparing it.
obviously.
This is no way in league with Desecration Demon. But, that clause of, sacrificing a creature, to, stop it from tapping, like it harkens back to Desecration Demon, which was a card where your opponent could sack a creature to put a counter on Desecration Demon and tap it. It feels like similar wordplay, but this card is so much worse than Desecration Demon.
Also in a deck where you can potentially get the Apocalypse Demon huge, it's also the kind of deck where you're not going to be playing like a lot of creatures. Black Green Delirium is mainly a creature focused mid range grindy deck, but you're also going to be generally speaking playing 1 or 2 creatures a turn. And when you have to sacrifice a high impact creature for the most part, just so you can have this guy be untapped, is not good. Not good.
The only thing I could see is that if you have a fair number of Ishkanahs, you can sack a spider token to it.
Yeah.
But that still feels bad. This card is bad. Don't play it. Don't pick it.
Well, I mean, let's say you curve, right? let's be generous with this card. Let's say you curve from 5 mana in Ishkanah into a 6 mana Apocalypse Demon, right? Potentially, that might not be terrible. I mean, the fact that it relies on your graveyard so much is an issue. So graveyards are going all over the place, and then there's also graveyard hate. We've gotten a lot more.
Yeah, it has no baseline stats, so if your graveyard just gets exiled, then it just dies.
Right. So most likely, it's a dud. It's gonna be a junk bulk rare. But
it has such an awesome name.
It does have an awesome name. There is definitely some shenanigans. You can get this thing pretty crazy high power toughness. But yeah, second clause is tough.
All right, next up is Bane Whip Punisher. For 2 and a black, you get a Human Warrior 2/2 stats at uncommon. When Bane Whip Punisher enters the battlefield, you may put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. And for a black, you can sack it, destroy target creature that has a -1/-1 counter on it.
Great.
Yeah, this card's great.
I'll take it. This is 4 mana. It's a 4 mana removal spell, almost essentially.
Yeah. It's also similar to a 3/3 in stats in a sense, where you're getting a 2/2 plus your -1/-1 and something. Yeah, this card's great. It's flexible. Like, it's a removal spell that can also be a creature if you need it to be just a creature. So yeah, I like this card a lot.
Yeah, you can drop this. Drop this for 3 mana. Put a -1 counter on a creature your opponent controls. Perhaps you have some synergies with -1/-1 counter, so you get some triggers off of that. You go to combat. You do some shenanigans with blocking. You can even block with this guy, and then before damage, pay the other black to kill another creature. So yeah, all in all, this is a very good limited card.
Now I will say this: be careful if your opponent has a creature with a -1 counter on it, and you also have a creature with a -1/-1 counter on it, just in case they have a way of removing that -1/-1 counter when you activate it, because then you'll be forced, to find, a target, and this can target your own creatures. So there are potential blowouts for that.
Now, when you sacrifice this guy,
mm-hmm.
and that goes on the stack, don't you have to have a target when it's on the stack, or does the target come once it resolves? Because I'm thinking,
I think it's both.
Well, because I'm thinking
So you have to have a target to activate the ability, but when the ability resolves, if there's an eligible target, it'll check on resolution as well, won't it?
Well, because I'm thinking if it needs a target when you sacrifice it, and your opponent manages to remove the counter on the creature that you're targeting, then I would assume the ability just fizzles.
Good point.
I'm not 100% on that.
Actually, you may be correct, since it has that colon in there. Yeah, I think you might be correct, since it has a colon.
I'm not entirely sure, but that may be how that interaction works. I mean, regardless, that would suck.
Yeah.
Oh, I will.
It's still a really good card.
Oh, but for constructed, I will mention briefly about its constructed playability. It's kind of mediocre. The -1/-1 counters theme, whilst it is existent, is just not good enough.
If there's a format with a lot of 1 toughness creatures running around, yeah, sure. But that, you have cards like Liliana the Last Hope at the same time that deals with 1 toughness creatures a lot better.
Yes, it does. Yes, yeah. I mean, in this format, there's no tier deck right now running around in this format that reliably runs -1/-1 counters, and we're gonna be seeing in this set throughout that there really isn't that much more support for -1/-1 counters, so that's not gonna change much in the future. So that card probably is not gonna see much play. There's just not a home for it. Alright, so the next card is a Bantu's Last Reckoning. It's 1 generic black for a sorcery. Destroy all creatures. Lands you control don't untap during your next untap step. So 3 mana for a damnation is powerful, obviously. But your lands don't untap. That's dumb. I hate that effect. I hate that effect so much. Tell me why this effect isn't that bad, though.
I don't care for that effect either. And, for standard implications, I'm not entirely sure what the prospects of this card is for, but in Modern, there are a lot of decks where, being able to play a damnation a turn earlier against, those elves, sometimes affinity. Affinity is weird because a lot of their creatures are also lands. So, there are some board states where this is really relevant, some where it's not so relevant. But, there are a lot of decks, like elves, for example, where just getting damnation a turn earlier just completely ruins them. And you're perfectly fine with your lands not untapping. However, that said, damnation has a much more relevant text in Modern. Creatures they control cannot be regenerated, which this does not have. Do I think Bantu's Last Reckoning is going to replace damnation? Probably not. However, it is a powerful option available in case you're in a meta where there's a lot of elves running around and you don't have access to, Anger of the Gods. I think I think this card is strong. However, for standard, being able to play something the next turn is pretty relevant. So, I mean, basically, when you play a card like Bantu's Last Reckoning in standard, you are clearing the board, but your opponent has the first say. Your opponent's going to get that first committal to the board, which is, not an advantage you exactly want to be throwing up, because you're going to have that turn off where they basically have, free reign. In Modern, however, there are enough decks where wiping the board basically prolongs them enough or gives you enough card advantage where it's realistic that, taking the extra turn off is fine. But yeah, I'm not too sure. Damnation is still a really strong card.
Well,
And
yeah,
even Damnation doesn't see that much play.
but for standard purposes, paying 3 mana for a Wrath is powerful, but then if your opponent drops something like a Gideon, then he just feels bad.
Oh yeah, it feels so bad.
But outside of that, though, I was thinking about this card more. When I initially saw this card, I was very underwhelmed. I mean, I was overwhelmed by the fact that it's a 3 mana Wrath, but then underwhelmed by the fact that your land's on tap. But I was also thinking about what kind of certain matchups this might be good into, and I'm thinking that in the standard environment, bringing this against decks like zombies or Black Green Delirium might actually be worth it. Because in the zombies deck, if you can wipe their board, I think taking a turn off might be good enough. Because the zombies
because
deck,
they rely on tribal. They
right,
rely on
zombies
the
deck
tribal
goes
synergies.
little tribal synergy, and it goes wide enough and fast enough that if you wipe the board, they probably won't be able to go back fast enough that taking a turn off won't be that much impact on you. And secondly, on with Black Green Delirium, that's the kind of deck that is aggressive, but also has very high toughness creatures. So a lot of the rats right now in the format, well, Fumigate is basically the only rat that is pretty much unconditional. This gives black an unconditional wrath at cheap cost too, 3 mana, where it may be worth trying in maybe a single sideboard slot against decks like Delirium or decks like zombies. The problem is I'm just gonna say sideboard slot because this is a format that is currently very hostile to board wipes due to the fact that vehicles are so relevant, and vehicles dodge board wipes like a champ.
Yeah, that is true.
So the vehicle lists will most likely not care. Plus, vehicle lists are running Gideons, which they don't
Also,
care at all about.
Care as much. Yeah, it's possible. I mean, Languish after Siege Rhino rotated was a format all-star.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible Bantu's Last Reckoning can be a lot better once vehicles are no longer in the format. However, we do have a hunch in Yaxlan that vehicles will make a return.
Well, also, vehicles will always be in the same format as this card due to the rotation schedule.
Oh, yeah, that's right, because Amonkhet block won't rotate until Kaladesh does. Yeah, I forgot about that change.
So they'll never escape each other. But
that's a shame.
Bantu's Last Reckoning is worth a sideboard consideration, I think, because it is
agree.
powerful against Black Green Delirium. There's not too many ways to wipe a Black Green Delirium's board outside of Fumigate. So if you're like Grixis or something like that, or Demir, this gives you another option against those kind of decks. Standard, it's not standard. Sorry, we talked about standard. Limited rats are generally speaking good. I would recommend playing this in a turn where you can play this and a creature, just so your opponent can't like one up you with a creature next turn. So you're at least on some kind of steady ground. And with 3 mana, it's cheap enough that you can probably find a situation where you can do both. So, powerful effect. I think first pickable for the most part. Mass removal like this is rare to come by. So, yeah, that's my analysis for draft purposes, for limited purposes. Powerful effect. Just be careful when you're casting it, not to fall into a position where you're out-tempoed heavily.
All right, next card is Doomfall. So for 2 and a black, you get a sorcery, modal spell. Choose 1, target opponent exiles a creature he or she controls. And target opponent reveals his or her hand. You choose an on-land card from it. Exile that card. I'm honestly not too keen on this card because while having opponent exile a creature he or she controls sounds good, it is not target creature. So it is much more akin to a sacrifice effect where your opponent is getting to choose what gets removed. And to me, that's kind of rough to have on a 3 mana spell.
So this is comparable to Supreme Will in that it is a flexible spell with two different two different useful abilities, but just a little bit upped in mana because of the flexibility that it gives it. Now, unlike Supreme Will, which has playability because those effects I think are costed fairly, this one is just too overcosted because paying 3 mana for Sorcery Edict is bad, and paying 3 mana for Thoughtseize is also bad. Unlike Supreme Will, where paying 3 mana for either effect, stapled onto one effect, is worth it. In this scenario, the extra mana cost is just not worth the flexibility at all.
Yeah, like 3 mana discard spells run into the problem where generally, turn 3 or turn 4 is when, players' hands start getting, fairly sized down. The later it goes on, discard spells, you just have less to choose from, and also it's on the hinge of, not even being playable, like your opponent doesn't have any cards in hand where you can take advantage of that. And once again, like, while there are some tokens, in this format, it's not a big token format, but there's enough where having your opponent exile a creature he or she controls just feels bad because they can just choose a token or a creature that's not as relevant, and then you just paid 3 mana for an effect that's pretty bad.
Now, edicts are pretty relevant in this format due to creatures like the gods, which are indestructible, and creatures like
Yeah, but that's mythics though. Those are
yeah,
mythics.
mythics. Well, I'm talking generally speaking constructed because
Oh, and constructed. Sorry.
gods, and bristling hydra and the like, and because of the exile clause, is it exiling a creature instead of just sacrificing a creature. It'll deal with the newer gods with their return to hand clause, scrap heap scroungers, etc. Unfortunately, there are just better ways to deal with them if you're looking for a way to deal with
Yeah.
those kind of cards. In limited, both effects are subpar. Edicts are always worse in limited, and discard spells are always worse in limited. So stapling them together and making them more expensive is just a recipe for disaster. So the lesson we learned here today, folks, is that this card costs too much for what it's worth. It's definitely not worth it. Alright, next we have Dream Stealer. This is 2 generic and a black for a 1/2 human wizard with Menace. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player discards that many cards and is eternalized for 4 generic black. It's a strong effect. At face value, it's a 3 mana 1/2 Menace. Poor stat line, but Menace means it's most likely going to be able to swing in. And when it does mean your opponent is discarding a card. This is okay. It's okay. In the mid-range mirror or against control, that's a fine effect. Now it gets much more interesting when you internalize it. Now you get a 4/4 Menace. And if it makes contact, then your opponent is discarding 4 cards, which is insanely powerful. But eternalizing for 6 is very slow. And when you eternalize for 6, 4/4 isn't exactly the most difficult thing to take care of, especially in the type of decks that you're going to want this effect. Against aggro, it doesn't really matter too much if your opponent doesn't have any cards in hand. But against mid-range or control, you're going to want to get that damage in, but then they're going to have removal to take care of it. So, it's a tricky card. Tricky card to evaluate.
This card is a good example of Eternalize being a very interesting mechanic in the sense that this effect, while bad, up front, in that it's a 1/2, so you're only getting a ceiling of 1 card being discarded. When it comes back as a 4/4, that effect is much more relevant. So I like Eternalize from that standpoint. It's very interesting, like mechanic-wise. This card in particular is very interesting use of that.
I will actually go back on my comment about it against mid-range and control decks, about it does die into removal. I mean, it does do double duty against those decks because the removal of the discard effect is relevant, but also eternalizing card means your opponent most likely have to deal with this card twice, which is very effective against the mid-range mirror or the control mirror or against those kind of decks. So
they get 2 for 1 essentially.
Right. There's a lot of potential against those kind of decks. Aggro decks is much less powerful, but against the mid-range control decks, this definitely has a slot in there. Potentially powerful. In draft, in 3 mana 1/2 is a very poor stat line, but if you can get eternalize it, a 4/4 with Menace is very powerful. So draft purposes is fine. I think I would pick an uncommon removal over it. Maybe I pick an uncommon removal over it. Let me think. Yeah, I think so. Cause like even if you can eternalize it, a 4/4 menace is understated by a bit. Because the 4/4 menace is still strong, but if you get the trigger off, it's probably not gonna be even that impactful by the time you get the eternalize. Because your opponent's probably gonna have maybe 1 or 2 cards at most. So yeah, probably even in limited, I probably pick uncommon rule over it. But powerful effects, 4 mana, 4/4 menace, nothing to laugh about. Also, did you notice how the art kind of goes into my background a little bit? Yeah, totally planned that out.
Ooh,
Ooh.
total. No one cares.
All right, let's move on.
All right, next is a card a lot of people care about. Hour of Glory. For 3 in the black, you get an instant. Exile target creature. If that creature was a god, its controller reveals his or her hand and exiles all cards from with the same name as this creature. It is a story card, so that planeswalker mark in the text box signifies that it's relevant to the story of Amonkhet / Hour of Devastation. And this card has extremely unfortunate art.
No, it's not. I like it. It's nice art showing brotherhood between two guys. Like the Scorpion guy just wants to give his old
I
snake
think it's
brother
stranger danger.
a nice.
Like
No,
poor
no, giving you a
Ronas.
nice
Get back.
back rub.
Get back, Ronas.
He's giving you a nice little back rub.
Stranger danger.
Oh, they're so Scorpion God's so nice. Yeah, the artwork is goofy, especially if you know the story. Scorpion God absolutely just shreks the Snake God, totally just stingers him right through the head. Oh, unfortunate. Rest in peace, Snake God. As for the card itself, 4 mana to exile target creature that has premium removal in limited. But in constructed, it's a bit expensive.
It has an effect similar to Deicide, which was in Journey into Nyx, which was 1 and a white to exile an enchantment. If it's a god, it exiles all cards with the name. Of course, this is creature, but similar vein. I don't think, this isn't like Theros where gods were a lot more popular.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate. In Amonkhet, the gods just really aren't that relevant. And the gods really do not see much play at all.
Yeah.
And I do not think the newer gods will see much play in constructed. Spoiler alert, either.
And at 4 mana, this is an expensive removal spell for standard. I don't.
Now, exiling is relevant. Exiling is
Exile
relevant.
is relevant, but 4 CMC is pretty expensive, is it not?
It is expensive. Yeah, I mean, most removal caps up at 3. Even 3 is expensive for the most part. The most removal. I mean, Fatal Push is the premium removal right now in standard, and that's just 1 mana. Grasp of Darkness follows that pretty closely.
Oh, it's the premium removal in modern too, buddy.
I mean, premium removal. It's a format all-star. All formats. So following closely behind that is Grasp of Darkness. Then some lists. A lot of the vehicles lists and control lists that are in black and red will be running unless disintegration, but then that's about it. That's where the removal caps out. Once you're paying 4 mana to remove something, especially when most creatures are costing 3 or less mana, like paying 4 mana to exile a Scrappy Scrounger, that feels bad.
That does feel bad.
And the second ability is just not relevant in most cases. And I think if you're going to deal with a god, you're just better off running to the slaughter, which is an edict effect, which deals with the gods and stuff that you're going to want to be exiling a lot of the time. Okay, next card is Liliana's Defeats. This is a 1 black for sorcery. Destroy target black creature or black planeswalker. If that permanent was a Liliana planeswalker, her controller loses 3 life. So I think this is my favorite of the cycle, of these defeat cycles. It's a very narrow effect, but it's also 1 black for kill spell. And it's any black creature or planeswalker. And there are some pretty relevant black creatures or planeswalkers in a couple of different formats. If we're going to let's start with draft. First of all, in draft, it's mediocre because a lot of times you're going to be running up against 2-color decks. And so it's a pretty unreliable way to kill something. I mean, maybe if you notice your opponent has a lot of black creatures, you can safely pull it in from the side, but it's strictly sideboard. It's strictly sideboard in every format, but in limited it's worse because you're probably not gonna have a much reliable way to have a lot of targets. Standard, there are a few pretty relevant hits. We can hit Snake with this card, Grimflayer. You can hit Grimflayer. You can hit Noxious Gearhulk. Noxious Gearhulk doesn't see a whole lot of play, but it does crop up sometimes in the Delirium lists. There's gotta be some more creatures.
You can hit anything in the mono black zombie deck.
Right. Oh, zombies. I completely forgot about zombies for some reason. Pretty much everything in the zombie list it hits for one black. Very neat way to deal with anything in the zombies list. So there's a lot of
Except for
relevant.
Metallic Mimic.
Except for
But
Mentality
whatever.
Mimic. Also, except for Scrappy Scrouncher. Scrappy Scrouncher's everywhere. God, that card. So yeah, while narrow, there are a lot of very relevant hits in Standard. Also hits Liliana too. Liliana's a very powerful walker. Liliana, the Last Hope, doesn't see quite as much play as it used to, but it's still a very strong planeswalker. If we're gonna talk modern, it also hits Liliana.
Death Shadow.
Death Shadow. You know, Death Shadow hits Liliana of the Veil. You know, there's some pretty relevant creatures it hits as well. Oh, am I missing anything? I feel like I'm missing something like pretty big.
Well, if you're going with modern, Tassiger
Tassiger, yeah.
and Gurmag Angler.
I suppose, I mean, Path also deals with all of them pretty nicely, except for Liliana. So, most likely the cycle, and none of these cards in the cycle probably will see modern play, because they're just most likely, because Cyborg cards are at such a premium, correct?
Yeah, and modern, like your sideboard slots, you can dedicate your sideboard slots to silver bullets, but silver bullets need to be a lot more powerful than Liliana's defeat. And generally in modern, like how I want to sideboard is unless there is a deck to beat, you need to have a flexible sideboard. And it's just Liliana's defeat will not see play, like frankly speaking. Unless there's some format where like there's just a bunch of, Death Shadows all running around, and for some reason 4 fatal pushes was not enough for you.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah. And that also does, this card also does run the same problem in Standard where it competes with Fatal Push. And Fatal Push just hits more things. But maybe, some supplement, you can supplement your Fatal Push in Standard as well. With some more removal. Not too bad. Not too bad removal spell.
How I would explain it if the meta is exactly Death Shadow and 8-rack, which is probably never going to happen.
Exactly.
If it was exactly Death Shadow and 8-rack, I would be comfortable playing Liliana's defeat in my sideboard. I don't see that happening.
I think I'll see for my side because I do run a black deck, Grixis control list in Standard. So maybe there is some room in the sideboard. It is pretty tight. I have tuned that sideboard pretty neatly, so it might be tough to try to fit in a slot, but it is an effect that I'm willing to explore because one black for removal always feels good.
All right, next up is Lurching Rot Beast. It is 4 CMC, 3 generic, a black, 4/4/2 zombie beast was cycling for a black. Common.
It's
solid.
It's another single mana cycling card, like Living End. I don't know what does that deck do.
No, it's not gonna see play in Living End. There's a lot of 1 mana cyclers that have a better stat line than this card.
So
but Popper might want it.
Popper might want it, yeah. But these cycling for 1 is the best thing you can do for the most part. So it's a nice effect. 4 mana for a 4/2 by itself is a decent body. But the fact that you can cycle it means, if you're just not gonna bother the board state is irrelevant to a 4/2, or you don't have the mana to cast it, just cycle away, get a better card. So I'm gonna guess that my go ahead and say that my assumption that it might see play in Living End is wrong.
No.
Okay, good. Good
because
to know.
All that matters is the cycling cost in conjunction with the stat line, and there's just a lot of better cards, like whether they have a utility effect stapled on, i.e. Architects of Will, or they have straight up better stats like Horror of the Broken Lands. Horror of Broken Lands being a 4/4 with cycling a black. That's the part that's relevant. You're never playing these creatures for their converted mana cost. Almost never, I should say. So that's not particularly relevant. Being a 4/2 is worse than being a 4/4. So why would you play it?
All right, very fair.
Yep.
All right, next we have Merciless Eternal. This is 2 generic and a black for a 2/2 zombie cleric with Afflict 2, and you can pay 2 generic and a black to discard a card. Merciless Eternal gets +2/+2 until end of turn. This is a fine card. It's tough. This is a nightmare to block. A lot of times. I mean, paying 3 mana for that effect is expensive. But there is relevance in the format with, there's nothing in this set But in Amonkhet, there were situations where having one card or less means you do get a bonus. So discarding cards can help you fuel to that get to that point faster. Um, it can potentially swing in as a 4/4, and if your opponent does say block, you can maybe choose not to activate it, and your opponent still takes 2 damage. Like I previously said, my biggest problem with Afflict is if your opponent does profitably block, that even though they take the 2 damage, it doesn't really matter too much. There's only 2 damage, and then you're down a creature anyways. But because this card also has the tricky ability of being able to pump it, does make blocks a lot more sticky.
Yeah, but you have to discard a card to pump it, and with how much premium removal we've seen at common, I'm just gonna laugh hard when someone discards a card to pump this guy, and then someone's gonna remove it in
Yes,
response.
if they do that, then
And that's gonna be such a
would be
blowout.
unfortunate. Yeah, that'd be very bad. That would be very bad. So you're down 3 mana and a card, and you're down a creature. On
I will honestly say I do not like this guy.
It is fine. I think there are better uncommons to pick, but if you were to pick an like I don't know, if you were in a draft situation, the pack wheeled around. This is one of the uncommons that are left in the pack. I think I wouldn't mind picking it if I was in black, because its 3 mana 2/2 is subpar stat line, but the fact that you can make it better means it is inherently better with the Afflict too. Yeah, no, but you're right. It is pretty low power level compared to most things. And since it's pretty low power level and limited in standard, it's just absolutely nowhere. This is definitely not a card you're going to want to be playing. I mean, the zombie list doesn't want it because they don't really care. I guess you can discard a Scrappy Scrounger, but then you're better off just playing the Scrappy Scrounger in the first place. You can discard, I don't know, Fiery Temper maybe, but I don't even know what kind of list that would be. Black, Red, Madness. That had no legs. Yeah, this card is going nowhere real fast.
Yay! I get a big dumb mythic to talk about. We have Razaketh, the Foul-Blooded, 8 CMC, 5 generic, black, 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 for a legendary creature demon at mythic 8/8. It also has Flying Trample, and, more interestingly, pay 2 life, sacrifice another creature, search your library for a card, and put that card in your hand, then shuffle your library. So it has a tutor engine attached to it, where all you gotta do is pay 2 life and sack a creature, and that's really, really cool. And this card is really, really slow at 8 CMC, plus you have to set it up. It is an 8/8 Flying Trampler, which is neat, though. I mean, in Limited, if you ever cast this guy, you pretty much win, not because you can tutor anything from your deck, but because you have an 8/8 Flying Trampler. If a Tarka, if Big Mama Tarka didn't show anyone in Dragons of Tarkir, it's that 8/8 Flying Tramplers don't fuck around.
See, I don't see Razaketh destroying something though. I don't see Razaketh doing 5 damage. Brah, 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 brah.
Well, that's true, but I mean, it's still an 8/8 Flying Trampler for 8 mana, which is ridiculous rate.
For supposedly being the strongest of the 4 demons that Liliana is destined to defeat, he is surprisingly underwhelming. I mean, what would it be?
I mean, Gristlebrand straight up like draws you 7 cards, just draws you in your entire deck. Like that card's absurd.
Would this card be so overpowered if it did not have the sacrifice another creature cost? Like just paying 2 life to tutor? Like, would that be that so bad? Because it's already costing you 8 mana to cast this card, which is ludicrous.
Yeah, it'd be pretty absurd. Like, I don't think you needed to have both clauses on there. Like, you could have just sacrifice another creature, but being able to only pay 2 life for whatever card you want is just really absurd.
Well, you're paying 2 life for any card you want, but you're also paying 8 mana up front for an 8/8. You know?
I guess the argument for it is that even if it didn't have the second of the creature clause, you would still play Grizzlebrand over this and any Reanimator deck.
Yes.
Just because those decks, rely on drawing a full grip, or 2 full grips in many cases. Because you exile a lot of cards from your hand with Nurturing Shoal so that you can gain that life back and essentially go off. So no, but this card, if this card did not have sack another creature, it'd be really absurd for Commander. Just being able to pay a bunch of life to tutor whatever card you wanted. I mean, I think this card is just really strong for Commander.
What isn't absurd for Commander, honestly?
Yeah, that's true. Saying a card is good for Commander is like saying Lightning Bolt's good for a burn deck.
I'm overall underwhelmed by this card. This card just costs too much for what it's worth. Even in limited, it might be tough. I mean, I'd first pick it because it's an 8 mana 8 flying trample, but that's also very slow.
I'd first pick it just because it's fucking legendary demon.
It's pretty swag. It is pretty
Yeah.
swag. But yeah, it's an incredibly slow effect that probably won't see much play in constructed formats. In standard, it's too slow, and in modern, there's just better reanimator targets with Grizzleband and stuff, and legacy, etc. Old Grizzle Daddy, way better.
Yep. Poor Razaketh.
Next, we have Razaketh's Right, 3 generic black for a sorcery. Search your library for a card and put that card into your hand and shuffle your library, and also has cycling for a single black. Another one that's pretty underwhelming. So 5 mana for a tutor effect is super slow. Like, that's insanely slow. I mean, I thought 4 mana for a tutor effect was really slow. What's that, Diabolic?
Yeah, Diabolic. Diabolic. Was it Diabolic Tutor?
Something like that. Diabolic Tutor, Demonic Tutor, one of those.
No, I'm pretty sure it had Diabolic in it. I just don't know if the second word was Tutor or not. Yeah, it was Diabolic Tutor, which was reprinted in Kaladesh, I believe. Yes, it was reprinted in Kaladesh.
Yeah.
I don't think this card would have been that bad if it was at 4 mana with the cycling tacked on. Like, obviously, it's better than Diabolic Edict, but that's still not going to bust anything, in my opinion.
No, it's not going to bust anything because even at 4 mana, I'm not going to play this card.
Yeah.
Because there's no point in paying 4 mana for a tutor effect. I mean, I'm going to waste my turn just so I can have the exact card that I want. That's not worth it. The tutor effects are strong because they're so cheap. You know, Vampire Tutor. I guess the other one's Demonic Tutor. 2 mana, 1 mana, tutor something. Sometimes at instant speed even. That's insanely powerful because oftentimes you can cast it again the next turn, or you can cast it early enough that it doesn't matter. If you're spending the entire turn that late in the game to tutor something is bad. You can cycle it, but this basically, to me, this basically just reads 5 mana. You can also pay 1 black to cycle it. This is the entire card. That's what I read the card as.
Like, if you can pay 1 black to tutor the top card of your library. Some joke. Someone else told that joke, but I thought it was stupid enough to rehearse.
Tutoring the top card of your library is pretty strong.
Yep.
I won't deny. Yeah, this is a thumbs down for me in every aspect because in limited, tutor effects are horrible. Like, you almost never want a tutor effect because they're just usually not the kind of card that you really care wasting a turn so you can bring up, And in constructed, I doubt this will see much play at all. Although I do remember there was a very sweet deck that I used to play back during Shadows Block, which was Seasons Past deck. Of course, that had the advantage of it was the tutor effect that was used was the I forget the name, but
Dark Petition.
It was powerful because it also had a Dark Ritual tacked onto it. So when you cast it and you get Spell Mastery, you also get 3 black. So it essentially became a 2 mana Diabolic, 2 mana tutor. So you save on a lot of mana. This you don't. So womp womp.
Womp womp. All right, next up is Torment of Hailfire. It is X and black. Casting cost for a sorcery at rare. Repeat the following process X times. Each opponent loses 3 life, unless that player sacrifices a non-land permanent or discards a card.
Your God Pharaoh has returned. That's sweet flavor text.
I mean, most of the time, people are just going to choose to lose a life.
That's the problem with these type of effects where your opponent gets to choose.
They're called Punisher effects, and it's a very apt name. Apropos, I should say. Because the one being punished is you, the person who plays the card. Because your opponent is going to pick whatever situation is best for them. Casting this at X equals 1 is terrible. 2, it starts to get okay. Because that's 4 mana deals 6 to face, which generally speaking is all right, unless they have non-land permanents that they're fine sacrificing, or cards they're okay with discarding. At 3, this starts to get out of hand. Anything over 4, this card is pretty absurd actually. But that's the problem, is that you're playing a sorcery that has to basically be 6 mana
Yeah,
for it
but
to
then
be
your
really
opponent's
good.
always gonna
And
pick
your
the worst
opponent's going to
option.
pick what's best for them.
Yeah, so like you say you do it at 4, so you're paying 6 mana to you're saying you want to hopefully dome your opponent for 12, but then your opponent's just gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna lose 3 life, I'm gonna lose 3 life. Okay, now I'm just gonna discard the card, or discard a card, sack this token. You know, so it's just like boo. You know,
Yeah,
this conversation comes up every single time a Punisher effect comes up, basically saying, okay, so yeah, this is a Punisher effect. Your opponent can choose the worst option, but the pretty good options. This conversation always comes up, and even though the options get better and better, the fact that your opponent gets to choose just makes it so bad.
and you know, I must say, which this is probably going to sound like we're on loop, but this card's good in Commander. Each opponent. So
It does hit each opponent. Yeah, that's true. That's
yeah,
true. It's like a what's that card? Exsanguate or something like that. It's a black X. Each
I
opponent loses
believe that
X
only
life.
hits one player
No, that
though.
hits each player. I'm fairly confident.
Exsanguate hits multiple players.
I thought it did.
Oh yeah, you're right. Each opponent loses
Boom,
X life.
got
Yep,
there.
you're correct.
In Commander, yeah, it's a pretty neat effect. I mean, if you can get a stupid amount of mana, which isn't that hard to do, honestly. If you tune your deck, you can do some stupid things. In the realm of limited, it's poor because Punisher effect. In the realm of standard, it's poor because Punisher effect. In the realm of modern, I mean, do you even look at this card sideways in modern?
No,
Yeah. Unfortunate though, because it's got cool. I mean, it's a cool card though. I dig the flavor and like the way it's designed. You know, it's cool. You know, it's the kind of card that like 5-year-old me would like love to be casting.
hey, if there's some mono black Tron, go for it. You
Yeah,
know,
go for it. Just wreck the
but
world.
yeah, but I don't see that happening.
Yeah, it's probably not going to see play, most likely. Alright, next card, Torment of Scarabs. 3 generic and a black for enchantment or a curse. Enchant player. At the beginning of enchanted player's upkeep, that player loses 3 life unless he or she sacrifices a non-land permanent or discards a card. Okay, so stay with us here, folks. We just said that Punisher effects are really bad because your opponent gets to choose. This one, your opponent gets to choose, but it's not that bad because it's happening every single turn. This can rack up pretty quickly. This is a lot like a card in Amonkhet called Cruel Finality, except that was a mythic and it costs 7 mana, and your opponent sacrifices first, and then when they can't sacrifice anymore, they start losing 5 life. That ends games. Period. This is way cheaper at 4 mana. Instead of your opponent forcing to sacrifice, your opponent gets to choose between losing 3 life or sacrificing a permanent. But at some point in the game, as the game goes long enough, the options keep getting worse and worse, and your opponent is going to be in a situation where they're backed into a corner. And losing 3 life every single turn that's a hell of a bad deal.
But Torment of Scarabs is comparable to Torment of Hailfire in the sense that it has to go on for. If it goes on for 2 turns, it's basically exactly the same as Torment of Hailfire. If it goes on for more than that, you're obviously getting a mana advantage. But I think that's a problem. Is that this is a 4 mana enchantment that does nothing the turn it's played.
Well, it does nothing the turn it's played, but it'll have an impact immediately on that player's upkeep, which isn't that far off from the turn of playing it.
Yeah, but if you only get 1 proc out of it, it's not that great. 2 procs, it's okay. It really takes the 3rd proc to make this card really good. And, maybe if this format is, slow enough, which it probably will be, since this is limited, that can happen a lot. But if it is a very aggressive format like Amonkhet was, then no, this card is not good in that situation.
So this card reminds me a lot of a Cursed Witch back in Shadows over Innistrad, which was a very good card. It was a format of 4.
Cursed Witch had a body, though.
A Cursed Witch had a body, yeah, but okay, that's very fair. A Cursed Witch did have a body, but you wanted that body to die anyway, so you can have that enchantment be placed on that player. Having an effect that repeats every single turn, and if you get this on turn 4, it's gonna last for a lot of turns. This is gonna rack up in a way that's gonna gain you a lot of value in the long run. That's gonna be very powerful. I think this is a very very good uncommon for limited purposes.
Yeah, I mean, like it has the advantage over Torment of Hailfire, just in the sense that this is an uncommon, and Torment of Hailfire is a rare. So that is definitely something taken into consideration as well.
I think there's gonna be many situations where you're gonna get a lot of value of tournament scares, mainly because the tournament scares is gonna be able to go on for that many turns. Hailfire is a one-off situation where you're probably only gonna get X to be maybe 3 at most, maybe 4 even if you can push it. This one I can see you easily getting 5 plus activations in any game you play it. Of course, now that's limited. We're talking here. I think that's going to be very good at limited. When it comes to constructed purposes, these curses are pretty underpowered. Playing 4 mana just so your opponent can either choose to lose 3 life or sacrifice a creature or discard a card is not. It's not crazy impactful. I'm trying to think of a way. I'm trying to think of a situation where it might actually be not too bad. Because I'm thinking, like, maybe a black deck might want to play it. Like, let's say...
If there's a Dirtle.deck.
Dirtle.deck, yeah. I mean, well, let's say you put it on a Teamer Energy deck. That's one of the more popular lists right now, standard. You put it on a Teamer Energy list.
And if they don't beat you to death, turn 5.
True, if they don't beat you to that's the biggest issue. Because the format is so aggressive that most likely if you do play this, there's a good chance your opponent just takes a 3 life and then continues to beat you in the face because they don't care too much about your life. Just I think probably in constructed formats it's just not impactful enough to see play.
All right, next up is Vile Manifestation. It is 2 CMC, so 1 generic and a black for a creature horror at uncommon 0/4. Vile Manifestation gets +1/+0 for each card with cycling in your graveyard. And it also has cycling too, and I like this card. Yeah, if you only have 1 card with cycling in your graveyard, 2 mana 1/4, which is fine. It also has additional upside of cycling. If you have 2 cards with cycling in your graveyard, this is really good. 2 mana 2/4. And the ceiling just keeps going up. If you have a cycling deck, this card is amazing. Blue-black cycling, archetype. This card slots right in. This card is amazing.
I really wish every card just had cycling too on it.
Oh yeah, the cycling's so nice.
That would be awesome.
I love this guy.
No, this card's very, very efficient. Very good card. Because even paying 2 mana for 0/4, that's not crazy good, but it's not bad. I wouldn't mind it. It's a good place to put -1/-1 counters even. And and if you do have the cycling support, which is not hard to do at all, because cycling cards are generally very good cards to pick up, you're gonna get a very good, very big creature for a very low cost. Yeah, I like this card a lot. I agree too. This is gonna be a very good card to pick up.
He's like a mini Goyf.
Yeah, like a mini Goyf, exactly.
Yeah, like a mini Goyf.
This card is something that you can definitely want to highly pick. I think the high pick uncommon for sure. For constructed. The cycling deck, as previously mentioned, just doesn't really have too many legs, so there's not really much room to put in a Vile Manifestation. I don't think there's really a shell where this card can really shine. So I think it's a dud when it comes to standard, unfortunately. So that's the last of the black cards. We'll now be going into red.